Well, good evening. We're continuing on with the commentary on the book of Genesis, and we reached chapter 18. And in today's chapter, Abraham entertains three angels. And the Lord appeared again unto him in the plains of Mamre, as he sat at the tent door of the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, three men stood before him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself towards the ground, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favour in your sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourself under the tree. Notice that Abraham did not invite them into his tent. He considered he was not worthy enough to do that, so he invited them to sit under a nearby tree. Verse 5 is the conclusion. I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort you your hearts. After that you shall pass on, for therefore are you come to your servant. And they said, So do as you have said. The three visitors agreed to accept the hospitality of Abraham's house. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. Now, having lived in this Eastern culture for many years, it's not an instantaneous thing to make meal, then knead it and cook it on a hearth. It takes time. And Abraham ran into the herd and fetched a calf, tender and good, and gave it unto one of the young men, and he hastened to dress it. Now he had to run to the herd, select a calf, bring it back to the house, order the servant to dress it, that is, removing all the blood, and then cook it. All of this took time. And while this was happening, the 3 men waited in the shade of the nearby tree. Maybe this took an hour to prepare. And he took some homemade butter and milk and the calf, which he had dressed, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. Here was Abraham being the perfect host to these travellers, making sure that they had everything that they needed. And in verse 9 they said unto him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he said, Behold, she is in the tent. Verse 10 is a promise, and he said, I will certainly return unto you, according to the time of life, which is the time of birth, and to Sarah your wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken with age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Verse 12, conclusion. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, not audibly, just within herself, thinking, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being also old? Now Sarah laughed within herself, not audibly, but within herself. But God knows the intentions of our hearts, even before we speak. So he knew that she was laughing inwardly at his suggestion that she would have a child in her old age. And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child when I am old? God confirmed to both of them that he knew what she was thinking, and that she was doubting the possibility that she could bear a child in her old age. Yes, it was impossible for man to do this, but is anything too hard for God? This is the question that God asks in the next verse. And it's a promise. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. You might think with your earthly minds that what I am saying is impossible. Yes, for man it is impossible, but it is not impossible for the Lord to have a barren woman have a child. Now, many people misunderstand this and similar statements by the Lord. which relate to specific events, but are not true for all situations. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Well, yes, surprise, surprise. There are things which are too hard for the Lord, and we should be very pleased with the fact that they are too hard for the Lord. Let us look at some statements. Let's look at the statement above, the one that's just been said. The Lord has prophesied that Sarah will have a son, and he will return to see her at that time. Therefore, God cannot deny that a child will be born to her, nor that he would return to visit her again at the time for her to have birth, because that would be lying, which is a sin, and God cannot lie. Yes, God cannot lie. God cannot sin. God cannot refuse to honor his promises in his word. God cannot refuse to acknowledge the sacrifice of his Son, Jesus Christ, on the cross for our salvation. Now, if God could do any of these things, we would be in trouble. So, it is wrong to take this scripture, which is event-specific, and use it as an across-the-board statement for all situations, because that is not scripturally correct. So let us continue. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. Notice that the Lord did not admonish her for her lie to him, because he knew that she was afraid. And the men rose up from there and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on their way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham the thing that we are going to do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all of the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. Seeing that the Lord knows the end from the beginning, he already knows what Abraham will do in the future at this time in Scripture. Is it right that I should keep this event hidden from him? And the Lord said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous. Many people say that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah was gross homosexuality. But what does the Bible say? The New Living Translation says, Sodom's sins, plural, were pride, gluttony, and laziness, while the poor and the needy suffered outside her door. For these sins, God destroys these two cities. What about your city, the place where you live? Are you proud? Do you offer and practice gluttony? Are some people in your city lazy? Do the poor and the needy suffer in your city? Or do you care for them? That was just enough for God to decide to destroy the city. Verse 21, commandment, and I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether to the cry of it, which is come up unto me. And if not, I will know. And the God who knows everything says, I am going down there to check this out for myself. Verse 22, and the men turned their faces from thence and went towards Sodom. But Abraham stood yet before the Lord. So 2 of the men, that is the angels, went towards Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham. And Abraham drew near and said, Will you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous men within the city. Will you also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from you to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from you. Shall not the judge of all of the earth do right? Here is an interesting question raised by Abraham to the Lord, after he had been told what the Lord was planning to do. You are the judge of all of the earth. Are you going to kill the righteous with the wicked? If there are 50 righteous people in the city, will you spare the city? And 26 is a conditional promise. And the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all of the city for their sake. So that was it. If God could find 50 righteous people in the city, he was quite happy to spare the city, not destroy it. So the Lord listened to the argument of Abraham and agrees that if he find 50 righteous people in the city, then he would not destroy it. And Abraham, being an Eastern culture man, loves to haggle. So we start off with 50. And Abraham answered and said, behold now, I have taken me to speak to the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. Peradventure that shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous, will you destroy all of it for the lack of 5? And the Lord answered, if I find there 45, then I will not destroy it. Jesus, the angel of the Lord, answers and said that even for 45 righteous people, I will not destroy the city. And Abraham speaks to him again and says, peradventure there shall be 40 found in there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 40's sake. And Abraham still keeps going. And he said unto him, oh, let not the Lord be angry. And I'll speak again, peradventure that there shall be found 30 there. And the Lord said, I will not do it, even if I find 30 there. 31. And he said, behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure shall there be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And Abraham said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. So Abraham pleaded with the Lord in fact, he interceded with the Lord for the lives of the people in the city, that the Lord would not destroy the city if he found 10 righteous people in the city. Jesus promised that if he found even 10 righteous people in the city, then he would not destroy the city. The challenge today is this. Are you sure that if Jesus came down to your city, would he find 10 righteous people, which would save your city from destruction? And the Lord went his way as soon as he left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. Sadly, we find in the next chapter that there were only 4 righteous people in the city. But even then, Jesus could not destroy the righteous people along with the wicked. They must be saved.